What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button right now. We're on a mission to reach 1,000 subscribers, and your support means everything. Every single subscription gets us closer to that goal, so let me see you smash that button and join this incredible community. Now let's dive into today's story, because what I'm about to share with you is absolutely insane. Listen, I need you to understand something right off the bat. What we're dealing with here isn't just another football controversy. This isn't some manufactured drama cooked up by sports talk radio to fill airtime on a slow news day. What just happened in Cleveland is a genuine earthquake that has shaken the entire NFL to its core, and the aftershocks are going to be felt for months, maybe even years to come. We're talking about a situation so explosive, so raw, and so deeply personal that it transcends the game itself and ventures into territory that makes everyone uncomfortable. This is about family dysfunction playing out on the national stage. This is about a mother publicly declaring that her son's professional dreams are dead on arrival. This is about a franchise so broken, so politically toxic, that its dirty laundry is now being aired in the most spectacular fashion imaginable. Par Sanders, the mother of Shedeur Sanders, just delivered a verbal assassination that nobody saw coming. 5 words. That's all it took. 5 simple words that have ignited a conversation about everything that's wrong with the Cleveland Browns organization, everything that's wrong with Kevin Stefanski's coaching philosophy, and perhaps even everything that's wrong with how the Sanders family operates behind closed doors. When those words left her mouth, captured on video for the entire world to witness, she didn't just make a casual observation. She pronounced a death sentence on her son's career in Cleveland, and she did it with such casual brutality that it left everyone who heard it absolutely stunned. Let me paint you the full picture of how this all went down, because the context makes it even more devastating. We're in Pittsburgh, right outside Acrisure Stadium. The Browns are about to face their bitter rivals, the Steelers, in one of the most intense rivalries in all of professional sports. The atmosphere is already electric with that unique brand of hostility that only division games can produce. Shiloh Sanders, Shedeur's brother and a popular content creator with his own thriving YouTube channel, is doing what he does best. He's creating content, giving fans that behind the scenes access they crave, and trying to inject some personality and fun into what is otherwise a pretty miserable situation for Browns fans. He spots his mother and decides to have a little fun with her, asking one of those playful hypothetical questions that content creators love because they usually generate great reactions. The question itself was designed to be lighthearted, even funny in a dark comedy sort of way. Shiloh knows full well the complicated history between his parents, the very public divorce, the tension that still exists between Par and Deion Sanders even years after their split, so he crafts this absurd scenario, this impossible hypothetical that's meant to get a laugh. He asks his mom what would happen if Coach Stefanski came to her with a deal, if she and Deion would sit together for an entire game, putting aside all their differences and their complicated history. Then Stefanski would finally start Shedeur at quarterback. Would she do it? Would she be willing to endure that uncomfortable situation if it meant her son finally got his shot? Now, there are a million ways Par could have answered that question. She could have laughed it off. She could have played along with the joke. She could have said something diplomatic or clever that acknowledged the absurdity while keeping things light, but that's not what happened. What happened instead was a moment of such raw, unfiltered honesty that it felt like watching someone get punched in the gut. Without missing a beat, without even a hint of humor in her voice, Par looked directly into the camera and said, "Honey, you're never getting in." The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. There was no smile. There was no wink to let everyone know she was just playing along with the joke. This was stone cold reality delivered with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. Think about what she just did in that moment. This wasn't some anonymous source leaking information to a reporter. This wasn't a cryptic social media post that could be interpreted multiple ways. This was a mother, on camera, telling the entire football world that her son has absolutely zero chance of succeeding in Cleveland under the current regime. She wasn't speculating. She wasn't being dramatic. She was stating what she clearly believes to be an undeniable fact. And the most chilling part? She said it with such certainty, such finality, that it's impossible not to believe she knows something we don't. She's not just making an educated guess based on what she sees on television every Sunday. She's someone with inside access to the situation, someone who has conversations with her son, someone who understands the political realities of that locker room and that coaching staff better than any of us ever could. The immediate reaction was shock. You could feel the energy change in that moment. Shiloh, who had been expecting a funny response for his channel, suddenly found himself in the middle of something much bigger and much more serious than he had anticipated. The video started circulating immediately, spreading across social media like wildfire. Within hours, every major sports outlet in the country was talking about it. Analysts were dissecting it. Former players were weighing in. The comment section on every platform was exploding with debate about what Parr really meant and what this means for Shedeur's future. But here's where it gets really interesting, and this is where we need to dig deeper into what's actually going on here. Because Parr Sanders is not some naive woman who doesn't understand how the media works. She's been part of the Deion Sanders circus for years. She knows that everything she says, especially on camera, will be analyzed and scrutinized. She knows that her words carry weight and will be broadcast to millions of people. So when she made that statement, she knew exactly what she was doing. The question we need to ask is, what was her real intention? What message was she actually trying to send, and who was that message really for? The first and most obvious interpretation is that Parr is simply being a realist, a protective mother who refuses to let her sons live in a fantasy world. She's watched this situation unfold week after miserable week. She's seen Kevin Stefanski stubbornly stick with Deshaun Watson and then Dillon Gabriel, despite mounting evidence that neither quarterback gives the Browns their best chance to win. She's heard all the excuses, all the explanations, all the political doublespeak about development and timing and trusting the process. And she's concluded, based on everything she's observed and everything she knows about how the NFL works, that the deck is simply stacked against her son. In her eyes, this isn't about Shedeur's talent or preparation or readiness. This is about organizational politics, coaching ego, and institutional resistance to change. From this perspective, her comment wasn't cruel or defeatist. It was an act of love. She's telling her sons to stop hoping, stop waiting for Kevin Stefanski to suddenly have an epiphany and do the right thing. She's trying to protect them from the emotional devastation of false hope. She's seen too many talented players waste years of their careers waiting for opportunities that never materialize because coaches are too stubborn or too proud to admit they made a mistake. She doesn't want that for Shedeur, so she's ripping off the band-aid, forcing everyone to confront the ugly truth that as long as this coaching staff is in place, Shedeur will never get a fair shake. It's a brutal truth, but sometimes brutal truths are necessary to force people into action. The second interpretation is far more calculated and strategic, and this is the one that really has people talking. What if this wasn't just an honest assessment? What if this was a deliberate, premeditated shot across the bow? What if Parr Sanders just declared war on Kevin Stefanski in the most public way possible? Think about the position she just put him in. By making this statement so publicly, she has weaponized his own stubbornness against him. She's essentially saying that Stefanski's loyalty to his chosen quarterback is so absolute, so irrational, so completely disconnected from reality that not even an impossible miracle like her reconciling with Deion Sanders for an entire game would be enough to change his mind. That's an incredibly damaging accusation to level at a head coach, especially one who's already under intense scrutiny. She's painting Stefanski as a man so blinded by ego and so committed to protecting his own reputation that he's willing to sacrifice the team's success rather than admit he was wrong. And the brilliant part is that she's done it in a way that's almost impossible to refute. How does Stefanski respond to this? If he comes out and defends his decision, he looks defensive and insecure. If he ignores it, the comment hangs in the air, growing more powerful with each passing day. If he actually does bench Dillon Gabriel and start Shedeur now, he looks like he caved to public pressure from a player's mother, which completely undermines his authority. She's created a no-win situation for him. Every single time the Browns offense struggles from this point forward, and let's be honest, they're gonna struggle a lot. Parr's words will echo in everyone's minds. Honey, you're never getting in. It becomes this haunting refrain that completely undermines everything Stefanski says about his quarterback decision-making process. She's turned herself into the voice in everyone's head, constantly questioning whether the coach is making decisions based on what's best for the team or what's best for his own pride. That's an incredibly powerful position to put yourself in, and it suggests a level of strategic thinking that goes way beyond just a mother venting her frustrations. But here's the interpretation that I find most fascinating and honestly most troubling if it's true. What if this comment wasn't really about Kevin Stefanski at all? What if the real target was actually Deion Sanders himself? Stay with me here because this gets complicated, but it's worth exploring. Shiloh's original question was specifically about Parr and Deion sitting together. The entire premise of the hypothetical was built around the very public and very messy relationship between Shedeur's parents. When Parr responded the way she did, completely dismissing the entire premise as impossible and hopeless, was she really talking about Stefanski, or was she sending a message to her ex-husband? We all know that Deion Sanders is an incredibly hands-on father who has been deeply involved in managing his sons' careers from the very beginning. He's orchestrated their paths through college football, controlled their media narratives, and positioned them for success at the professional level. Coach Prime doesn't do anything halfway, and he doesn't sit on the sidelines when his family is involved. So the question becomes, what is Deion doing about this situation in Cleveland? Is he working behind the scenes to get Shedeur an opportunity? Is he making phone calls, applying pressure, using his considerable influence in the football world to change the dynamic? And more importantly, is whatever he's doing actually working? Parr's comment could be interpreted as a sign of frustration not just with Stefanski, but with how the situation is being handled overall. Maybe she believes that Deion's approach isn't working. Maybe she thinks that his involvement is actually making things worse, creating more resistance from a coaching staff that doesn't want to be told how to run their team by an outsider, even if that outsider is a Hall of Fame player. Maybe she's implicitly saying that for the first time in his sons' careers, Deion's power and influence have hit a wall they cannot penetrate, and that wall is Kevin Stefanski's stubbornness. If that's the case, then her comment takes on a whole new dimension. It's not just about exposing Stefanski, it's about challenging Deion, questioning his strategy, and perhaps even suggesting that it's time for a different approach. This interpretation opens up a Pandora's box of speculation about potential tension within the Sanders family itself. Are Parr and Deion on the same page about how to handle this situation? Do they agree on what's best for Shedeur's career? Or are there fundamental disagreements about strategy, about when to push and when to be patient, about whether to force a confrontation or work quietly behind the scenes? The fact that she made this statement so publicly, knowing it would create massive headlines and put enormous pressure on everyone involved, suggests that she might be operating independently, pursuing her own agenda separate from whatever Deion might be doing. That's a potentially explosive dynamic that could have ramifications far beyond just this one situation in Cleveland. Now let's talk about Kevin Stefanski himself and why this situation has reached such a critical point. Because none of this happens in a vacuum. Parr Sanders didn't wake up one morning and decide to nuke her son's career situation for no reason. This is the culmination of months of frustration, watching a coach systematically destroy his own team through stubbornness and poor decision-making. Stefanski's handling of the quarterback position this season has been nothing short of catastrophic. The entire city of Cleveland has been screaming for change. National media members have been calling him out. Former players have questioned his judgment, and through it all, he has remained completely unmoved, absolutely committed to his chosen path regardless of the mounting evidence that it's the wrong path. Dillon Gabriel has been a massive disappointment. That's not an opinion. That's an objective fact, supported by statistics, by film study, by the eyeball test of anyone who has watched Browns games this season. The offense is anemic. They can't sustain drives. They can't score points. Gabriel holds the ball too long, takes unnecessary sacks, makes poor decisions under pressure, and lacks the leadership presence that successful quarterbacks need to have. He doesn't command respect in the huddle. He doesn't make his teammates better. He's just a guy going through the motions, trying not to make mistakes, playing not to lose rather than playing to win. Despite all of this, Stefanski has stubbornly refused to make a change. Week after week, he trots Gabriel out there, watches the offense sputter and fail, and then comes to the podium after the game and offers the same tired explanations about execution and trusting the process and staying the course. It's maddening to watch, and it's even more maddening when you know there's a potentially better option sitting on the bench. Shedeur Sanders has all the physical tools. He has the arm strength, the mobility, the field vision, and the football IQ. More importantly, he has that intangible quality that separates good quarterbacks from great ones. He has confidence, swagger, and the kind of magnetic personality that can galvanize a locker room and inspire teammates to elevate their game. But none of that matters to Kevin Stefanski, and the question everyone has been asking is why? Why is he so resistant to even giving Shedeur a chance? What's driving this stubborn loyalty to Dillon Gabriel when it's so obviously not working? The most logical explanation, and the one that most people have settled on, is ego. To bench Dillon Gabriel at this point would be a public admission that Stefanski made a mistake. It would be an acknowledgement that his evaluation of quarterback talent was flawed, that his offensive system isn't working, that he doesn't have all the answers. For a coach who's already on the hot seat, whose job security is perpetually in question, that kind of admission can be career-ending. So instead of doing what's right for the team, he's doing what's right for his own self-preservation. He's protecting his reputation at the expense of winning games. He's sacrificing the season to avoid admitting he was wrong. It's a calculus that makes sense from a purely selfish standpoint, but it's absolutely devastating for everyone else involved. The players who are working their tails off every week deserve better. The fans who invest emotionally and financially in the team deserve better. And Shedeur Sanders, who has done everything asked of him, who has prepared professionally, who has waited patiently for his opportunity, definitely deserves better. And now we have confirmation from people inside the organization that Stefanski's stubbornness isn't just a temporary phase. This is the long-term plan. According to multiple reports, the Browns are already looking past their current quarterback room entirely. They're not planning to give Shedeur a real opportunity. They're already scouting college quarterbacks for the 2026 draft. CBS Sports' Josh Edwards recently reported that the team could be targeting South Carolina's LaNorris Sellers, a big-bodied quarterback with pro-level arm strength. That tells you everything you need to know about how the organization views Shedeur Sanders. They've already written him off without ever giving him a chance. Think about how insulting that is. They're actively scouting his replacement before he's ever started a game. They're making plans for a future that doesn't include him. They've rendered him completely invisible, a non-entity in their long-term thinking. And this is exactly what Par Sanders was talking about when she made her devastating comment. She sees the writing on the wall. She understands the organizational dynamics at play. She knows that the decision makers, led by Stefanski, have already made up their minds about her son, and nothing is going to change that. The game is rigged, the deck is stacked, and no amount of talent or preparation or waiting patiently is going to make a difference. This brings us to the bigger question of why the Browns have soured on Shedeur to begin with. What is it about him that makes them so resistant to giving him an opportunity? Is it his confidence, which some people mistake for arrogance? Is it his famous last name and all the media attention that comes with being a Sanders? Are they intimidated by the Deion factor, worried that if Shedeur becomes the starter, Coach Prime will insert himself into the situation and create a circus atmosphere? Do they fear that the Sanders brand is so powerful it would eclipse the organization itself, making the coach and the front office look like supporting players in someone else's show? Whatever the reason, the trust clearly isn't there. And in the NFL, a coach's trust is everything for a young quarterback. It's the foundation that everything else is built on. Without that trust, you have no chance. You can have all the talent in the world, but if your coach doesn't believe in you, if he's not willing to put you in position to succeed, you're going to fail. You're going to waste away on the bench, watching your career slip away while less talented players get opportunity after opportunity. That's the nightmare scenario that Par Sanders is trying to prevent. She's seen it happen to too many players, and she refuses to let it happen to her son. The fallout from Par's comment is going to be massive and long-lasting. The locker room dynamics in Cleveland were already toxic before this happened. Myles Garrett, the team's best player and one of the premier defensive talents in the entire league, has already publicly expressed his frustration. After yet another disappointing loss, he told reporters that the team keeps losing the same way over and over, which was clearly a shot at the offense and the coaching staff's inability or unwillingness to make necessary changes. Other players have been more subtle in their criticism, but the message is the same. There's a growing sense that the people making decisions don't actually care about winning as much as they care about protecting their own positions and avoiding admitting mistakes. Now Par Sanders has poured gasoline on that fire. She's validated every player who has privately questioned Stefanski's judgment. She's given voice to the frustration that's been building in that locker room for weeks, and she's done it in such a public, dramatic way that it's impossible to ignore. How do you maintain team unity when the mother of your backup quarterback is publicly declaring that the coach is so stubborn and so committed to the wrong path that her son has no future with the team? How do you maintain respect for a head coach when his decisions are being so thoroughly eviscerated not just by media members and fans, but by the families of his own players? This is a crisis of leadership unlike anything we've seen in recent NFL history. Stefanski has completely lost control of the narrative. He's lost the locker room. He's lost the fan base. He's lost the media. And now he's losing the families of his players. There's no coming back from this without dramatic action. Something has to give. Either the front office needs to step in and overrule him, forcing a quarterback change regardless of his feelings on the matter, or they need to trade Shedeur and end this nightmare for everyone involved, or they need to fire Stefanski and start over with a new coach who isn't carrying all this baggage and all these failed decisions. What makes this situation so uniquely painful is that it didn't have to be this way. This is entirely self-inflicted damage. If Stefanski had just been willing to evaluate his quarterbacks objectively, if he had been willing to admit when something wasn't working and make an adjustment, none of this would be happening. But his pride and his stubbornness have backed him into a corner that he can't escape from. And now Sanders has ensured that the entire world is watching, waiting to see how this disaster unfolds. She's shined a spotlight on the dysfunction that the organization would have preferred to keep hidden. She's forced everyone to confront the ugly truth that talent and merit don't always win out in professional sports, that politics and ego often matter more than production and potential. The really tragic part of all this is what it means for Shedeur Sanders himself. This is a young man who has worked his entire life to reach the NFL. He's dealt with the pressure of living up to his famous father's legacy. He's excelled at every level of competition. He's shown the kind of talent and preparation that should have teams fighting over him. And instead, he's trapped in a situation where his own coach has decided for whatever reason that he's not worth the risk. He's become collateral damage in a power struggle he never asked to be part of. And now his own mother has publicly declared that his situation is hopeless, which might be the most painful part of all. Because even though Parr probably thought she was helping, even though she was probably trying to force the issue and create pressure for change, there's no way that comment didn't hurt Shedeur on some level. To have your own mother say on camera that you're never going to get your chance, that the situation is so hopeless that not even a miracle would change things, that has to sting. It has to raise questions in his mind about whether he should even be trying anymore, whether he should be looking for a way out, whether this organization is worth fighting for. That's psychological warfare, and even if it wasn't intended that way, that's the effect it has. So here we are watching this train wreck in slow motion, waiting to see what happens next. The pressure on the Browns organization is now at an unsustainable level. Something has to break. Either Kevin Stefanski finally swallows his pride and makes a change at quarterback, giving Shedeur the opportunity he's earned and potentially saving his own job in the process, or the front office makes the decision for him, either by forcing his hand or by trading Shedeur to end this circus once and for all. Or Stefanski digs in even deeper, refuses to budge, and the entire season continues to spiral into complete disaster until ownership has no choice but to clean house and start over from scratch. Sanders has thrown a grenade into the middle of this situation, and now everyone is scrambling to deal with the explosion. She's changed the dynamic completely. She's made it impossible for this to continue being handled quietly behind closed doors. She's forced everyone's hand, and whatever happens next, whether it's good or bad for Shedeur, for the Browns, or for Kevin Stefanski, will be a direct result of her decision to speak that brutal truth out loud. Sometimes it takes a mother's love to cut through all the political nonsense and force people to confront reality. And that's exactly what Sanders has done here. The question is whether anyone in the Browns organization is brave enough or smart enough to actually listen to what she's saying and make the changes that desperately need to be made. Or will they double down on their mistakes, circle the wagons, and let this talented young quarterback's career opportunities slip away while they protect their own egos and their own positions? Time will tell, but one thing is absolutely certain. After Sanders dropped that verbal bomb, nothing in Cleveland will ever be the same again.